He was supposed to walk out to thunderous applause. Another sold-out show, another city chanting his name. But just minutes before taking the stage, Jelly Roll collapsed in his dressing room, his body giving out in a way no one expected. EMTs rushed in. His skin had gone pale, his breath shallow. The official word? Exhaustion. But those closest to him knew better. This wasn't just about tour fatigue. This was a breaking point. Years of emotional weight, trauma, and silent battles. Crashing down all at once, Jelly Roll has always worn his pain like a badge of honor. Tattooed skin, gravel voice, lyrics that bleed truth. He's never been just a performer, he's a survivor. From jail cells to Grammy nominations, his journey has been one of grit, redemption, and raw storytelling. But what fans didn't see, what he didn't want anyone to see, was the quiet, unraveling happening behind closed doors. There had been subtle signs, missed calls, postponed appearances, a look in his eyes that seemed elsewhere. Still, he pushed forward, show after show, interview after interview, until his body forced him to stop. That night, backstage, wasn't just a health scare. It was a scream from within, a reminder that even the strongest fighters can't carry the world forever. This is the story of what really happened, the truth behind the mask. The moment Jelly Roll had to face everything he thought he'd left behind, and the terrifying possibility that his biggest battle was still ahead. Because what nearly broke him wasn't fame or failure, it was the fear that after all he'd survived. He still might not make it out whole. Long before the spotlight, the music videos, and the standing ovations, he was just Jason DeFord, a kid from Antioch, Tennessee, growing up in the shadows of addiction, poverty, and chaos. His mother struggled with mental health and substance abuse. His father hustled, selling meat out of a truck just to keep the lights on. Hope wasn't something people talked about in his neighborhood. Survival was. For Jason, music wasn't a dream. It was a lifeline. He gravitated toward the raw, unfiltered voices of Tupac and 3-6 Mafia. Artists who didn't sugarcoat pain but embraced it. Their music spoke of the streets, the struggle, and the scars. And slowly, he started telling his own story in rhyme. But the streets called louder than the studio. By 14, Jason had his first arrest. At 16, he was cycling through juvenile detention. Soon after, a felony conviction would brand him permanently. Most people would have written him off. Another statistic. Another lost cause. But he wasn't done writing his story. Behind bars, something shifted. With nothing but time and a pen, Jason began to turn his trauma into lyrics. He wrote furiously, filling notebooks with verses that captured his regrets, his rage, and his rawest emotions. When he got out, he didn't just chase a dream, he chased redemption. He took the nickname Jelly Roll, once a joke about his size, and turned it into a brand built on truth. No label, no manager, just mixtapes sold out. Of the trunk, underground shows, and a hustle that wouldn't quit. He wasn't polished, he wasn't marketable. But he was real, and that's what stuck. Slowly, people started listening, not just to the music, but to the man behind it, the one who'd seen hell and lived to rap about it. He wasn't just performing, he was proving that pain could be power, and that even the most broken beginnings don't have to define the end. When Jelly Roll finally broke into the mainstream, it felt like justice. After years in the underground scene, the world was finally paying attention. His blend of hip-hop grit and country soul hit a nerve, raw, real, and unapologetically human. Songs like Son of a Sinner weren't just hits, they were confessions, drawing in fans who saw their own scars in his lyrics. He was the underdog turned icon, but behind the scenes, the success wasn't healing him. It was testing him in ways no one saw coming. Fame came fast, sold-out shows, award nominations, TV. Appearances, interviews back to back, but with each milestone, the pressure grew. Now he wasn't just a musician, he was a symbol, a husband, a father, a role model, and every smile for the camera became another layer over the pain he never fully dealt with. The demons he'd once rapped about, they were still there, waiting. Anxiety crept back in. Old habits returned, not drugs, but isolation, overworking, emotional exhaustion. At night, after the lights dimmed and the crowd's cheers faded, he'd lie awake wondering if he was enough. Was he doing right by his daughter? Was he giving too much and losing himself in the process? Was he healing or just hiding again, Fans saw a man at the top of his game, but those close to him noticed something else, a kind of quiet unraveling. Moments when he'd space out mid-conversation, events canceled last minute with vague explanations, a look in his eyes that said he was somewhere else entirely. It turns out success doesn't silence pain. Sometimes it amplifies it, because now there's more to lose, more people counting on you, and more reasons to pretend everything's fine when it's not. Jelly Roll was still singing about redemption, but privately, he was slipping. And the cracks were getting harder to hide. The warning signs had been building for months. Subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Missed podcast appearances, radio silence on social media, a growing sense among his crew and family that something wasn't right. Jelly Roll was still showing up, still performing, still smiling, but the energy was off. He looked tired, not physically, but emotionally drained, like a man carrying weight no one else could see. Then it happened. Just hours before a major performance, Jelly Roll collapsed in his dressing room. EMTs were called. His skin was cold, his pulse unstable, his breathing labored. To the public, it was chalked up to exhaustion. Too many shows, not enough sleep. But those closest to him knew this was more than that. It was a full-body shutdown, years of emotional and physical strain finally boiling over. Behind closed doors, doctors delivered the harsh truth. Dangerously high blood pressure, chronic stress, and early signs of long-term health risks. He was told to stop immediately. No touring, no appearances, no more pushing through the pain. But stopping wasn't in Jelly Roll's nature. The man who clawed his way from jail cells to chart-topping success didn't know how to quit, especially when people were counting on him. But something shifted. One night, without warning, he went live on Instagram. No stage lights, no production, just him, alone, lit by a dim lamp looking straight into the camera. "I ain't been okay," he said quietly. His voice cracked. His hands trembled. "I thought I could carry it all, but I can't." He admitted to spiraling, not with substances, but with the old habits that kept him isolated and emotionally buried. He spoke about the panic attacks, the pressure, the fear of failing everyone he loved. For once, he wasn't the voice of strength. He was just a man in pain, asking for understanding. And that moment, raw and unfiltered, hit harder than any song ever could. The collapse wasn't just a medical emergency. It was a wake-up call, one that couldn't be ignored, even by someone as stubbornly resilient as Jelly Roll. When doctors laid out the risks, cardiac complications, burnout, a future that might never come if changes weren't made, he finally stopped pushing back. For the first time in years, he hit pause. He canceled several upcoming shows, a decision that cut deep. Jelly Roll has always seen performing as a promise to his fans, many of whom rely on his music like a lifeline. But this wasn't about breaking promises anymore. It was about staying alive. What followed wasn't a PR stunt or a redemption tour. It was a quiet, deliberate rebuilding. He started therapy again, hired a trainer to help him manage the physical toll of years on the road. And maybe most importantly, he began reconnecting with the things and people he'd neglected while chasing success. He opened up to his wife, Bunny, in ways he never had before. Conversations turned from logistics and planning to real fears, real doubts. With his daughter, Bailey, he shared more of his struggles, wanting her to see that strength isn't pretending. To be okay, it's being honest when you're not. He returned to spiritual routines he'd abandoned in the chaos. Prayer, meditation, grounding. Little things that once helped him survive darker days. Because now, survival wasn't just about staying clean or staying relevant. It was about staying whole. Fans noticed the shift, not just in canceled appearances, but in his tone. The way he spoke during interviews, softer and more reflective. The lyrics he teased online, less bravado, more vulnerability. The silence, when it came, wasn't absence. It was healing. For someone who built a career on coming back from the edge, this was different. This wasn't about bouncing back. It was about breaking the cycle for good. Because sometimes the bravest thing isn't clawing your way back into the spotlight. Sometimes it's stepping away long enough to remember why you ever wanted the light at all. Jelly Roll never set out to be a celebrity. Fame was never the goal. From the beginning, his mission was simple: tell the truth, and maybe help someone else survive theirs. And over time, that mission became something much bigger than music. One of his most powerful moments didn't happen on stage. It happened behind bars. In 2023, he returned to the same juvenile detention center in Nashville where he was once locked up as a teen. But this time, he walked in with a gift, a $250,000 donation to build a music studio inside. "Music saved my life," he told CBS. Maybe it can save theirs too. It wasn't a PR move. It was personal. A full circle moment for a man who knows exactly what it means to feel forgotten. And it wasn't the only one. Over the years, Jelly Roll has quietly poured time and money into recovery programs, mental health initiatives, and reentry services for former inmates. He's used his platform not to shine, but to spotlight those still in the shadows. His podcast, with Bunny, Dumb Blonde, became more than entertainment. It became therapy for thousands. Trauma, addiction, recovery, they talked about it all. Unfiltered, real, honest. The kind of conversations most people are too afraid to have, let alone broadcast. And at his concerts, something different happens. They don't feel like performances. They feel like group therapy, strangers crying together, healing together, singing not just to the beat, but to the pain, the healing, the hope. That's the legacy Jelly Roll is building. Not one defined by streams or awards, but by service, by second chances, by reminding people that their past doesn't have to be their prison. Because when the spotlight fades and the charts move on, what's left isn't the fame. It's the lives touched, the hearts healed, and the belief, even in the darkest places, that redemption is always possible. Right now, Jelly Roll stands at a crossroads. Not on stage, not in front of screaming fans, but in the quiet, uncertain space between breakdown and breakthrough. The collapse that once threatened everything may just become the moment that redefines him, not as a cautionary tale, but as a symbol of what it means to choose healing over hustle. The question isn't whether he can come back. He's done that. His whole life. The real question is how he'll come back. Will he return stronger, more grounded, finally putting his health, peace, and purpose ahead of the noise? Or will the pressure to please, to perform, to prove himself, pull him back into the grind that nearly destroyed him? Only time will tell. But what's certain is this. His story isn't finished. This latest chapter, raw, painful, and unfiltered, might be the one that matters most, because it shows a truth too many ignore. Even our heroes bleed. Even the strongest voices sometimes break. And sometimes, the bravest thing a man can do is admit he's not okay and ask for help. For fans who've leaned on his music in their darkest moments, this is their moment to lean back, to show up, to support, because Jelly Roll has given more than lyrics. He's given a lifeline to thousands who thought they were alone. If you've ever found comfort in his story, now's the time to return the favor. Support his recovery. Celebrate his honesty. And remember, the next time he steps on stage, it won't just be for the show. It'll be because he chose to rise again, not for the fame, but for himself. Because redemption isn't a final destination. It's a daily decision. And if anyone knows how to fight their way through the fire, it's the man who's already done it more than once. Jelly Roll's next chapter hasn't been written yet. But one thing is clear, he's not done, not by a long shot.